going on YouTube? Welcome to another video. Joining me here for a bench workout. We're starting off with some wide grip bench here. So this is a Monday. After filming all these videos and kind of editing them all together, you kind of forget what's going on. You mainly know your week by the movements that you're doing. Warming up here, trying to do some more reps in the warm up just so I feel a little bit more stable. Especially with these colder months, it takes a little bit longer to get nice and warmed up. You can walk on the treadmill, do some cardio and stuff, but the best way to prepare for a movement is to do the movement. And that's why we warm up. We kind of get ready to the weight, you know what I mean? We'll do reps here, kind of make sure our form's on point. And this is super important for gauging where you're gonna end up. If you're somebody who does like RPE training, how your warm-ups move, how they feel is gonna give you a lot of insight into where you're gonna end up for those top sets, those heavier sets. So for me, with the percentages, a little bit different, but I will adjust percentages if things aren't moving the way they should. And so I knew on the come up here previous, I probably had what I needed to hit here. And then you're gonna see with this 295, move pretty well. And I can usually gauge how fast my warm-ups are to see if I can hit the weight I need to hit. And with this program that I do, that I built myself, it's about overreaching and getting to a point where you're pushing yourself to do a little bit more, but there's also leeway to cut back, do less, work at a different intensity if that requires it. There's a lot of factors in life, whether you're sick, training hard, work, crazy stuff like that. You got to just kind of figure it out on your own. So that's what I found works for me. There should be auto-regulation built into every lifting program that you do, any sort of training program. Not every day is going to be ideal, and there are mechanisms to kind of figure out what you should hit. I'm a big fan of like rep calculators to kind of figure out where I should be. If I can't hit my reps I need to hit on the program, I will recalculate and see what's like a similar intensity and just emulate that. And I think that's the most important thing. You're not always going to hit what you're supposed to hit, or that number is going to fluctuate. So incline dumbbell press here. And something like this where the bench depends on who's using what. You can see a bunch of people in the background using stuff. You're not always going to get the same bench. They're all different angled inclines, so it depends on which ones you're pressing on. There's a Rogue one that's thicker. You can really drive into it, and it's got more set angles that I like. So you just got to use what you have and adjust. So that's why I always have leeway. A lot of times there'll be spectrums or ranges when you're training to kind of figure out where you should end up, and you should know that from your own training. If you're newer to this and following your program, you shouldn't be training at intensities that are surpassing that or not allowing you to finish those lifts or whatever. Once you get more intermediate and advanced, then that's where those deviations will kind of come into play, and you got to prepare for it too. So OHP here, you'll notice in some of these videos, I'm editing these videos in the order of the exercises I do. Sometimes it's not always that case. Sometimes things will change, and sometimes it will be a little bit more of a guessing game to what we should be doing. So when you're training, you should be listening to the feedback. You should be recording your lifts, and if you got enough memory, you can remember, but when you're doing so many movements, you have to just figure out where you need to be, kind of what works better. And I used to do my heaviest priority lifts first, so like the bench and the OHP. And then as I've kind of gotten into a range where I want to go lower intensity in the OHP, I don't mind pre-fatiguing with those other exercises and then making sure I can hit what I need to hit. But not too complicated, just something that I've learned. Again, not every day is going to be a lot, and you kind of have to push. You have to know when to push, put your foot on the gas, and then brake and kind of hit that yellow light and kind of settle when certain things aren't the way they are. Moving on to lower body legs here. And this is probably a movement that you're probably going to notice that more auto-regulation more so than anything else. Squat, some days the mobility may not feel great. You may not feel stable. It might take longer to figure out your movement pattern, and it may not feel good. And again, a movement you don't really want to push through certain, anytime you're having any sort of mobility and stuff issues and pushing through stuff, there's a big potential to get injured, and that's when I'll definitely cut back on squats, whether it's weight, intensity, reps, and kind of figure out what I need to do here. And I'll use it as a learning experience. Again, with these warm-ups, you're calibrating yourself to weight and movements. You need to figure out, okay, this move like this, so maybe I should cut my lower end, maybe not go as heavy. Well, this moved great. I think something big can happen today. And to do that within reason, I think honestly, a lot of people just kind of force things and don't understand frame of reference when it comes to how weight moves, when it comes to, recovery, right? If you hit those heavy sets that you're not scheduled to hit, you're going to dig yourself into a recovery hole that your further lifts down the week may suffer. So you have to find a good balance to where you're able to manage all this, and I think years of training will teach you that. And we're not always going balls to the wall when we're training. We're trying to make everything go in the right direction. And you can deprioritize certain things. You can make other lifts more emphasis and focus, do more reps, require more, rest days, eat more on those days. It just depends on how that affects you and what you want to do. So for me, I know when my bench is moving and when it's not moving. For squats, I can kind of manipulate and kind of work my way through. Deadlifts too, it's just, when the weight is too heavy or something like that, when we start to overreach and fatigue starts to grow, you need to be the one to be able to to dictate and figure out what's good and what's not. And that's what's important about watching your lifts, and I think that's also what's important about being able to understand how fatigued you are, what you can and can't do, and kind of knowing your limits. So be smart when you train. It's not just throwing weights around. It's not just doing a movement and going on. Obviously, you can start light with stuff and work up, but do it in stride. I'm somebody who, if I hit a new threshold of training or whatever, it might take some more out of me, but when I come back to it, I usually do better. That's just how I've always trained. There's like a downloading period where I have to, download exactly the movement, process it, a couple of nights of rest, and then I'm back and able to hit that thing again. So that's what I've noticed with my training. Deadlifts here, going beltless, and then just still having issues with lockout and stuff, and I will get better as I increase the weight. I'm just trying to do it slowly. I do want to acclimate my body to this heavier weights, and there are some things I definitely want to work on to make sure that I'm able to do it. But I do notice in these winter, colder months, I'm definitely down 10 to 20% in strength. And that, I don't know if it's just from recovery or whatever's going on in the summer and spring. It's just like everything's moving, which is, kind of a different experience. So you have to figure out when you're your most optimal. You have to figure out when to push, when to pull. You have to figure out when to cut back. And as you get older, you don't do it, your body's going to force you to. So play smart. Take the feedback. I put notes into my app whenever I do my training. If I skip out on a set or I cut back, I'll notice and put a note in there and say, hey, hamstring wasn't feeling too good, fatigue or whatever. And then I've got a frame of reference for why I did what I did. So I've got data points for those patterns. And then it'll be interesting to see when we do like a long pull of the data with all the training volume and stuff per seasons. And I almost guarantee my training is a lot more efficient and the numbers are higher in those warmer months. And that's just part of the game. I don't perform as much in cold weather. So you got to just do what you got to do, and you got to just keep training. As long as you're moving, you're still putting stress in your body, and your body still has to recover. But knowing when to introduce those new stressors is the key to all this. And no program in the world is going to prepare you for that. You can take one as like a baseline and structure. You're the conductor. You're the pilot. It's up to you to figure out what you got to do. And you have to think and troubleshoot. Again, this is not the most complex sport in the world. But you have to figure out, like you're literally training and prepping yourself for something. So what are your goals on here? Is it just to do movements? No, I'm trying to increase weight, increase reps whenever I can, while balancing out those heavier compound movements. And it's worked pretty well for me for years. We've been training consistently for years. We've had some bumps in the road and some injuries, but a lot of those came from reckless action. A lot of those came from decisions that I made that I shouldn't have that felt good in the moment. And sometimes there's a meathead in all of us that wants to push through the tough guy stuff, but you may win one battle, but you could lose the war. So you have to figure out the best way to turn your successes and everything into progress going forward. So again, this is no different than anything else. If you dedicate time and effort into something, you're going to get better, assuming you keep coming back and learning and recovering. And it's the same thing with lifting. A lot of the best people with the best physiques in the gym are going to be the long-term lifters. The people who come in and try to shortchange stuff, you're going to notice the lack of density in their muscle, the lack of strength, and their conditioning and ability to not only recover, but perform. So that's the video. A little bit of a rant. Like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one.
Thanks for watching the latest video. If you want to help support the channel, I actually own my own wet shaving and grooming e-commerce website where everything's handmade by me. It's www.apexsoaps.com, and you can get a 10% off code using wet shaver. We've got some cool scents here. We've got some Coca-Cola scents, a horchata scent, traditional barbershop, just some really cool stuff. And you can purchase samples or you can buy the whole set. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. Be quick to respond. Thanks for watching.